listened to Whole Lotta Red 3 times in a row. I listened to Die Lit and the self-titled album after to compare, and on first listen, Whole Lotta Red sounds like Carti is making fun of himself for an hour straight. What made Carti so appealing in the first place 4 years ago when he's blowing up is, in a lot of ways, it was the song structure and the beats, and not even so much Carti himself. Imagine if a lot of the biggest Carti songs didn't have a Pierre-born beat, or a good structure with a hook, or a chorus you could scream at a club or a party. He would have never made it to where he is today. And realistically, we all know Carti isn't a good rapper, nor does he write good songs. But that's not the point. It's more about the sum of the parts being entertaining and fun. Who cares if he can rap when the songs go hard? Dude, these songs don't go hard. Starting with, first point is the length. These songs are so short. The project is 5 minutes longer than Die Lit, and it has an extra 5 songs. At 24 tracks and maybe an hour long, these songs are maybe 2 minutes long on average. And it just doesn't work. There's no time for any progression or change within each track. No intro, no hook, sometimes no chorus, and even no drop in the majority of these songs. It seems like the songs off Whole Lotta Red aren't going to be nearly as big at clubs or parties like Carti's last 2 albums were. They just don't go anywhere. Tracks like Rockstar Made, Go to the Moon, Jump Out the House, No Sleep, New Tank, Meh, Vamp Anthem, New Neon, Punk Monk, they're half finished at the best. And by the way, I just listed 12 tracks that sound like they were made in a single day at the studio. That's half the album. Okay, and that leads me to the other thing I was really bothered by when I heard Whole Lotta Red, and it's the mixing. Okay, another reason why Carti was able to pull off a rap career without learning how to rap was the mixing and the production from Pierre Bourne. But his vocals just meshed so well with the beats on Die Lit. A lot of the time, it was like he was part of the instrumental, especially his ad-libs adding to the song and the rhythm. Tracks like Long Time, No Time with Gunna, R.I.P., Shooter with Lil Uzi, and then on his self-titled project, Location, Magnolia, Woke Up Like This, the rapping on these songs isn't much different from the rapping on Whole Lotta Red, but he just sounds too harsh, too dry on this album. It just sounds bad. The bass is more subdued, Carti's vocals are dry, they're loud and front and center, you can hear the plosives and pops in his voice as he raps. Even his ad-libs aren't mixed in with the beats at all, they just sound like him making animal noises half the time. I'm going to change my tone here. I know I just dragged this project, but after a few listens, the hate I had for it just faded away. So there are more positive notes I want to go over too. Ultimately, I think there might be a lot to like about Whole Lotta Red at the same time as it is a pretty frustrating project. First, the beats are great. Seriously, people have been saying for a while that Carti is almost carried by his producers, and while I don't think that's necessarily true, even though I think he wouldn't be nearly as popular as he is today without such good producers on his team. On this project though, the beats are seriously interesting. The melodies remind me of 2000s FPS music mixed with horrorcore sounds and traditional Carti drums. Gone is the dreamy ambiance of past Carti projects, except for a few tracks like Place, I Love You, I Hate You, and the Bon Iver sample on Feel Like Dyin. But for the most part, the beats on Whole Lotta Red are throwback-esque, horrorcore, spooky stuff, and it kind of works. Maybe King Vamp and Vamp Anthem should have been dropped as singles on Halloween, but to be honest, he probably made these 3 weeks ago, so it is what it is. All in all, I think in terms of beats, Whole Lotta Red is a pretty sensible progression for Carti, and I'm not surprised by it at all. I would maybe even say that these are some of my favorite Carti beats ever. But as far as I know, Pierre Bourne only worked on 2 songs for this project, so I imagine it could have been even higher quality if he had been a bigger part of the album. However, it does sound surprisingly cohesive, despite there being more than a dozen producers involved in the album, so I guess that does count for something. There's another thing I think will grow on people, and it's a direct contradiction of what I said earlier, the mixing. So clearly it sounds ridiculous compared to Carti's earlier work, right? But didn't I just say Carti himself sounded ridiculous when he first came into the scene 3 or 4 or 5 years ago? The amount of memes making fun of Carti's voice and style was insane. He was the most popular and the most hated rapper alive at the same time. And look, this new mixing that puts Carti's vocals front and center, ad-libs and all, drying out the reverb and vocal effects and auto-tune, it's not really a new sound, though it does sound new to us. In the past, Carti's vocals were, a lot of the time, floaty, far away, drenched in reverb and compression, to make him sound like he was part of the cloudy ambiance in his songs. For the most part, this style made Carti sound like a more energetic counterpart of Young Lean or Drain Gang. But on this album, I would almost say he's taking more inspiration from older rock, metal, and punk sounds by putting his vocals so front and center. The music almost sounds like it could have been made by the Ramones, Dio, Joan Jett, or even more recent bands like Green Day or early Panic at the Disco. These are artists from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s that would mix their music very dry and without many effects, stemming from DIY punk scenes that didn't have access to many effects pedals, which at the time were the only way to get reverb in your songs. Now, did Carti do this on purpose, or did he just not leave enough time for his team to properly engineer the record? Given the fact that, first of all, Kanye executive produced this record, and secondly, the album cover is a throwback to Slash magazine, which is an old punk magazine from the late 70s and early 80s, I'm gonna guess that this was intentional. And look, I get that this sort of punk, older, heavy rock sound isn't what people would expect or even want from Playboi Carti, but people didn't like Dial It at first either. Carti's tactic for pleasing his fans has always been to make what he likes and wait for people to get used to it. After all, Carti has already deconstructed the entire idea of what rapping should sound like, so why not song structure and mixing too? Look, it's pretty clear to me that Carti probably didn't put enough time into Whole Lotta Red. I would bet money that at least 40% of this album was made in the month before he submitted it to his label. Mostly because of how much music was leaked over the last few years, he can't include some of his best songs at this point. But does that mean Whole Lotta Red will be remembered as a failure? I mean, I don't think so. In the ever-changing scope of what is and isn't good music, a lot of the time artists can push the envelope when fans aren't ready. People might say, Carti fell off, this sucks, bad beats, bad rapping, whatever. But a month from now, a year from now, are we still going to look at it that way, or will Whole Lotta Red just be another Playboi Carti album, with some good songs and some not so good songs as well? It's not like we remember every song off Dial It or Self-Titled either. This morning when I was writing this review, I was going to come in here and say, Whole Lotta Red should be 12 tracks long. Carti should have mixed his vocals differently, he should have put more time into the songs, not left so many tracks unfinished, and maybe even taken the time to roll out the album properly, instead of just dropping it with no singles or videos. But after such a long, drawn-out process, with so many leaks and delays, this is what we got. And I think a lot more of these mistakes or bad qualities that people are talking about are actually intentional, and in 4, 5, 6 months, people are gonna like this album. Carti has always done first and thought of an excuse later, and that's why we like him in the first place. So even though I ragged on it for the first few minutes of this review, I think a lot of people will forget that we hated this album. For me, even given the odd creative touches and weirdly cut corners on Whole Lotta Red, I think it's still an interesting listen, with great beats and a new vocal style for Carti that could even become more influential in the broader music community. You know, listening to this on Christmas night, it was maybe a 4 out of 10. I'm sitting there thinking, Carti's vocal takes suck, the mixing is horrible, this is so harsh, this is so dry, the beats are just repetitive, Carti's songwriting is even worse. Listening more, realizing how interesting a lot of the beats are on here, realizing that Carti was going for a specific sound with his harsh, aggressive vocal delivery, more clear vocals, more articulate rapping, mixing reminiscent of old punk and heavy rock sounds. I think for me that makes Whole Lotta Red ahead of its time. So for me, I'm going to rate Whole Lotta Red an 8 out of 10. It had a great cohesive aesthetic, as weird as that is to say. I've started to enjoy Carti's new rapping style. Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, I don't know. But for me, this is an 8 out of 10. And look, at least no matter how you look at it, no matter what you think about Whole Lotta Red, I think we can all agree, thank God it wasn't boring. This has been Volksgeist. Thank you for watching.